We're in chapter 7, and we're talking about the war that Gideon is about to have with the Midianites. But before he has the war with the Midianites, he's choosing his army. Had a lot of soldiers, and Hashem told him that I don't want such a big army. I want it to be a small army because I would like to show that it's Hashem who's making you win the war, not the strength of your army. And so originally there were 32,000 soldiers, then 10,000 left. And then in the end, he only ended up with 300 soldiers. And he chose the soldiers, the final soldiers that he's going to choose to fight the war, was when he brought them to the water, and the ones who lifted the water up to their mouth and drank, those were the ones who were going to be fit to fight this war against the Midianites. So we're in verse 6, again, chapter 7, verse 6. It happened that the number of those who lapped with their hands to their mouth were 300 men. All the rest of the people knelt on their knees to drink water. So the other people had some type of a sin of either actual idol worship, or they didn't protest the idol worship. Somehow they lacked the merit to be part of they lacked the merit to be part of this war. And the amount of people that fought in this war was only 300. And they took the provisions of Hashem, verse 7. Hashem said to Gideon, through the 300 men who lapped, shall I save you, and I shall deliver Midian into your hand, and let all the other people leave, each to his place. And now in verse 8, and they took the provisions of the other people in their hands, as well as their shofars. So it seems like not everyone originally had a shofar. It was more like one in every group. And now they took all the shofars of all the other people so that every single individual had a shofar, and they had the provisions. And as for all the men of Israel, he sent them each to his home. All the other people who came to fight the war, they're now being sent back. And he kept the 300 men. So he's only got an army of 300 men. And the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. So you have to understand that the Midianites have a huge army. And it's quite scary to have a 300 people army, to fight a whole big nation. It's almost like, imagine taking filling a 747 plane with some soldiers and saying, we're going to fight the Russian army. You got your 300 people in this plane. It's not a very, you don't have very good statistics. It's not a very good statistics. The numbers are not really going, it's not it's definitely you need to have a lot of trust and faith in Hashem to go forward. And they did, the people and Gideon. It happened that night. I'm sorry. Let me start again, verse 8. And they took the provisions of the other people in their hands, as well as their shofars. And as for the men of Israel, he sent them each to his home, and he kept the 300 men. The camp of Midian was below. We did that. 9. It happened that night that Hashem said to him, arise and descend into the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid to descend, go down to the camp, you and Purah your attendant. So this is where Gideon, he wanted like a sign that he would be victorious. He wanted some type of a encouragement, even though he was willing to fight the war, but he wanted to have that extra encouragement. And Hashem hinted to him, if you are afraid to descend, go down to the camp, you and Fura, your attendant. So Gidon chose that option, and listen to what they will speak. Then your hands will be strengthened and you will descend into the camp. Now, the idea is that once he gets this sign and like sees some type of a miracle, it will give him much more strength of faith. He'll have the full faith to merit a real miracle. So even though he had faith, and it definitely was it's a huge statement to say that he was willing to take 300 people and fight a war, but at the same time, he wanted to have 100% faith, not 99.9. And he chose to take his attendant, and they went to the camp, and Hashem said, you will be strengthened when you descend into the camp. So he went with Fura, so he descended with Fura, his attendant, to the edge of the armed troops in the camp. And now we're up to verse 12. Verse 12 says, Midian, Amalek, and all the people of the east were encamping in the valley, and they were as numerous as a locust swarm, and their camels were countless, as numerous as the sand at the seashore. So this is a huge army, huge. Gidon arrived, and behold, a man was relating a dream to his fellow. So Gidon walked into their camp, obviously very quietly, and together with his attendant. And behold, there was a man was relating a dream to his fellow, and it said, behold, I dreamt a dream. Behold, a roasted barley bread was rolling in the Midianite camp. It came to the tent and struck it, and it fell.
Make it a little louder.
It turned it upside down, and the tent fell. So, talking about dreams, we just had last week's Torah portion and the week before. Now we've got what we just read here. We've got another dream. And this dream is the dream where a roasted barley bread is rolling in the camp, and somehow it turns over and it turns upside down the tent of the camp of Midian, and it fell, and the tent fell. So what is the interpretation of this dream? So his friend told him, his fellow answered him, and he said, this is none other than the sword of Gidon, the son of Joash, the man of Israel. God has delivered Midian and the entire camp into his hand.
Rabbi Smith.
Yes.
I had a question, and I'm looking at Me'am Loez, just sort of a question on the last pasuk, and he answers the question. The question was, why does the pasuk say twice you're going to go down to their camp? At first Hashem says, you and your servant go down to the camp. And then he says, and your hands will be strong and you'll go down to the camp. Why does Hashem say twice you'll go down to the camp? So I was thinking this question while we were looking at the pasuk, and then I saw Me'am Loez, because the first down to the camp was the first direction, the first directive. But when Gidon saw that Hashem was sending back everybody and only leaving with 3 people, he again became worried. Maybe Hashem had become angry with him and decided not to give him the victory. So Hashem had to speak to him again to reassure him and say to him, take these 300 and go down. He had to tell him go down twice, because after the first time, Gideon got scared that when he saw Hashem was sending back all the possible reinforcements and only leaving 300, Gideon got scared again. That's why it says twice that Hashem had to tell him to go down to the camp.
I think the question is a very good question. It says, if you're afraid to descend, go down to the camp, you and Purah your attendant, and listen to what they will speak. Then your hands will be strengthened, and you will descend into the camp. Meaning the second time is with everyone. So in other words, first it was it says like, arise and descend into the camp, because I delivered them into your hand. If you're afraid to descend, then go down with your attendant. Listen to what they speak. And then your hands will be strengthened, and you will descend into the camp, means with everyone. So, I mean, you could sort of, so he descended with Purah, and that's the first time. And then we'll see after he goes with everyone. So I'm not sure. I mean, questions, I guess it's it's a good question. It seems to be a little repetitive, but it's not, I think it's understood. I think the Me'am Lois maybe is just explaining, did he have faith or didn't he have faith? I don't know if it's really answering. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't have the Me'am Lois in front of me.
It's,
but,
he says he's taking it from the Radak and the I'm sorry.
But the Radak doesn't have anything on verse 11.
And the Abarbanel.
I don't have the Abarbanel, but the Radak doesn't have anything on verse 11. That's why it's.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Looking at the wrong page. I'm sorry. 140, 145, 24. Oh, sorry. Lev Aaron.
Oh, I don't have that book. Okay.
I don't know that. Okay. I'm just saying, like, in other words, I had the question come up to my head. Why does it say go down twice? Hashem said go down once. Why did the very next verse say go down again? So one go down was for one thing, and one go down was for.
Why is he testing him again anyway?
Maybe just emphasize.
Why is he testing him again anyway? In chapter 6, he did 2 tests, and God proved him and brought the people. So to me, it's like that was such a wonderful, incredible test with the sheepskin and the ground being dry, and then
Yep.
So how come he keeps testing? That's my question.
So
do they say anything about it?
Yeah, so the commentaries talk about this, and they explain that that Gideon wanted a sign from Hashem that it's actually going to be successful. You have to understand that the Jewish people are not in one of their highest level of holiness. So he knew where they stand, and he knew that it's very possible that they don't deserve great miracles, and because of that, he wants to make sure that he's making the right decision, and Hashem is backing them until till the end. He's fully backing them, and so that's really what's going on. Now the question here is, why is this additional time? And I mean,
I have an answer on that, Rabbi.
Okay, what is your answer?
My answer is, I'm looking and I see he tells him, go down to the camp. And if you are worried or afraid, go down to the camp with Purah.
Right.
So he's not telling him twice. He's telling him to go down, but if you are afraid, go down with Purah. It's the same.
Right, but if you look at the next verse, it says it a few times. It's going down, going down, going down. It continues to say it. Go down with Purah, and then listen to what they say, and then you'll be strengthened, and you will descend into the camp. And then it says, and so he descended with Purah. But I mean, it's not a strong question, because the second time it says it is talking about with the camp, with the whole.
The third time is to attack the camp.
Yeah, it's to attack with everyone else, not himself.
The third time is already the action.
Right.
The third time when he says go down means go down on the camp with your army.
with your army. Yeah, I did. I explained that to that.
The third time, yeah.
Right. You know, I don't see it as a. I think the question is more of a question of what, you know, Gloria's question of why doesn't he really have faith, or does he? Where is he standing? Where is the Gidon with regard to faith? And on that, I think David's answer is a good answer that, you know, that he brought from the Mamlois, that you know, that he is coming with a very small army, which I mentioned. You know, he's fighting a huge army, and he's only got 300 soldiers. It is definitely a you know, a dangerous mission he's on, a scary mission that he's on. But God is obviously you know, backing him. But I was giving a slightly different answer. I sort of mentioned it. I don't know if people caught on, but the answer that I was implying was that it goes hand in hand. His faith, Gidon's faith, is the source of winning, of the blessing to win this war. So the more faith he has, the more potential, the more blessing he's going to have, merit to win the war. So he wants to have 100% faith, not just 99% faith. In this way, he'll have a full victory, 100% victory. If he's not fully trusting and has that 100% faith, but he's slightly off, he loses some of the merit for him to actually win. And that's why he's choosing to do this. He feels that maybe he's not fully there in his faith. You know, he's willing to fight the war, it seems like, but Hashem gave him two options. You can, if you're afraid, you can do this. He said, I'm taking the afraid option, because you know, he felt maybe, you know, he would like to be 100% instead of maybe his 99%. That's the path. That was the path that I was taking. Yes, that.
The only reason I can see is he really wanted to fight with 32,000 people, which he thought he can win the war. The 300 people are not his pick. They are God's pick. It's God's army.
Right.
So he wants to be sure that they can win the war with God's army.
You don't need to say that. 300 itself, even if it's even just 300, forget about the pick. I mean, they're part of the 32,000.
Right.
They are part of the 32,000. Yeah. So, you know,
right.
But did he choose these 32,000, or did they just join him? Did he choose them individually?
Well, God told him who to choose.
That was from the 32,000. God told him who to choose. But in any event, the point is 300 itself. That number is a crazy number to fight against, you know, hundreds of thousands of troops or tens of thousands of troops. So it is a very, you know, he's ready. He's about to fight a very scary war. At least scary. It seems scary. Of course, he has full trust, so I'm sure he's not afraid. But he started off being afraid. Hashem said, if you're afraid, you should descend. And he felt he was maybe somewhat afraid, so he descended. And then he heard this dream. Now, what is the meaning of the dream? So what is the meaning of this dream? So the dream about the barley is that the barley is it's the sacrifice that's normally brought the day after Passover. I mean, the day after the first day of Passover. On the second day of Passover, they bring the sacrifice. They bring a meal offering, so to speak. It's called the Omer offering. And the Omer offering, we actually count between Passover and Shavuos. We call it Sfiras HaOmer. We do a counting every day until we get the Torah on Shavuos, so we do the counting. that counting originally was from the sacrifice on Passover till you bring the sacrifice on Shavuos. On Shavuos, they would bring a bread sacrifice from wheat. And on Passover, it was from barley. They would bring a sacrifice of barley. And that sacrifice of the barley bread, it says that the salvation came because this is the merit of the Omer. Thanks to this offering, God was going to save Israel through Gideon and his men. So this is the dream is a message to the Jewish people that the reason why they are meriting this salvation is because they bring this, or they brought this Paschal, this type of Passover offering called the Omer, and it's a portion, a certain amount of barley that they would bring. Now, the meaning of this, the deeper meaning of this is that the deeper meaning of the Omer bread is this: in order to grow barley and grain takes a lot of work. The farmer has to work very hard, and ultimately, when it grows, the farmer would normally like to take credit. But really, we know that all blessings come from Hashem. And the growth of the Omer, on all grain for that matter, it all comes from Hashem. So when Hashem used this Omer, this barley bread for the dream, what Hashem was saying is that just like the barley is very hard labor, and it all comes from Hashem, even though the farmer has to put in a lot of work. So now the same thing is this battle, everyone should know it's all Hashem, even though you're going to do hard work, but you're winning because of Hashem, not because of your labor. You have to put in the labor, but it's in the merit, it's all from Hashem. Just like the field of grain, it's all in Hashem's control. And everyone should remember that, meaning that is important to remember because that brings merit to win the war, to bring this miracle. And the merit of you acknowledging that Hashem is the one who's making you successful, which boils down to this general idea that we are all a reflection of Hashem. Our greatest goal is that Hashem should be visible through us. You know, that's really what life is. We're trying to bring Hashem wherever we go, and the more mitzvahs we do, and the more righteous acts that we do, people see Hashem through us. We are bringing Hashem into the world. We're reflecting Hashem here. And so this is the idea of to fight this war, but really it's Hashem. They are acknowledging that it's Hashem who's really making them win the war. And that's the idea of this barley. That's what's giving them the merit to win the war, as well as it's the acknowledgement that it's really Hashem. So
I'm awake.
So that's the interpretation of the dream, was that Gideon is obviously going to win. And immediately it says, what does it say right now? That it happened when Gideon heard the recounting of the dream and its interpretation, he prostrated himself. And then he returned to the camp of Israel, and he said, "Rise up, for Hashem has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand." So this is the beginning of the war now. Gideon is now convinced 100%. He has this new confidence, and he's now going to divide the camp into 3 parts. Let's see verse 16. He divided the 300 men into 3 groups. Okay, I'm just going to mute everyone. Okay, so not sure if someone was testing the shofar, because we're going to be reading about the shofar now. But okay, verse 16. He divided the group divided this 300 men into three groups and 3 parts. Into the hand of them all, he gave shofars. So he gave them shofars and empty jugs with torches inside the jugs. He said to them, "See my example and do the same." "Behold, when I arrive at the edge of the camp, then as I do, so shall you do." "I will sound the shofar, I and all who are with me. Then you too shall sound the shofars all around the entire camp, and you shall say, 'For Hashem and for Gidon.'" So this is what Gidon wants everyone to scream, blow the shofars, and we'll see about the jugs with the torches. We'll soon see. So why does Gidon want them to say this? What they're saying is that Hashem is causing the salvation. First Hashem, and for Gidon, it says afterwards, because what it's saying is through the hands of Gidon. It's from Hashem, for Hashem, and for Gidon. That first it's Hashem. Hashem is, of course, the source of the miracle. And through Gidon, it's through Gidon leading the Jewish people that they are meriting, that they are having this miracle happen. You know what it sounds similar to? What we say in the prayers from a verse, "Vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdoi," that they trusted in, when they left Egypt. It says, and they trusted in Hashem and in Moses, his servant. That it almost like the same verse, it mentions Hashem and it mentions Moses, but it's emphasizing that their trust is Hashem. And in Moshe here, the salvation is from Hashem, and they acknowledge that Gidon it's through the hands of Gidon. And now, verse 19, Gidon and the 300 men with him arrived at the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. And this is interesting that it's the armies used to have watches, and it seems like they had 3, and this is the middle one. At least the commentaries mentioned that there were 3. Well, of course, if there's a middle one, there must be 2. There must be one before and one after. And those that are with us in the morning, we learned that in the heavens, there's also 3 watches every night of the angels. And so here we see that the armies seem to follow that, that somehow it's a proper way of dividing the night is into these 3 watches. And the middle watch, Gidon said, that is when we are going to take advantage of the changing of the guards. Because during the changing of the guards, the people are they're not as stable. They're not as relaxed, and they're a little confused. They're not comfortable yet. So at the beginning of the middle watch, when they had just barely set up the guards, that's when we're going to really knock them off their rocker and just shake them up. And so they sounded the shofars and broke the jugs that were in their hand. Now, one of the reasons why they're sounding the shofars, Rashi over here brings an interesting point. He says that Gidon wants to get the merit of, wants to remind the merit of the revelation at Sinai. And we know at the revelation at Sinai, there was the shofar, and there was also thunder and lightning. And so the lightning is symbolized by these jugs that have this flame, and the shofar symbolizes the shofar. So Gidon is awakening the merit of Matan Torah, of the revelation at Sinai, at the giving of the Torah. And so he wants them all all the people are following him and doing as he does. So they sounded the shofars, they broke the jugs that were in their hand. The three groups sounded the shofars and broke the jugs in their left hand. I'm sorry, they broke their jugs. In their left hand, they grasped the torches. In their right hand, the shofars to sound, and they called out the sword for Hashem and for Gidon. Now, each of them stood in his place. All around the camp, and the entire camp ran. They shouted and fled. They sounded the 300 shofars, and Hashem set each man's sword against his fellow, and throughout the entire camp. The camp fled as far as Beis Hashita, Tzirei Rasa, unto the border of Ovel Mochela, right near Tabos. So these are the names of the cities where the people, those that were able to flee fled, and basically when they arrived at the camp, no one knew that they were there because their torches were hidden inside the jugs. And right then and there, you had 300 people smashing the jugs, holding the torches, and blowing the shofars, and also screaming to Hashem and to Gidon. And so ultimately, the enemy camp was extremely shocked and confused and overwhelmed, and they hear the noise, and they know they got to run for their life. Now, the thing is, who had the swords? Their army had the swords, and they were, it doesn't say anything about the Jewish army even having swords here. At least we don't see that here. And so the enemies are just pulling out their swords and slaughtering each other. And the Jewish people are just making the noise and scaring them. And those that fled, so they fled to these areas. And we're now in verse 23. And verse 23 says, the men of Israel were mustered from Naphtali and from Asher and from all of Manasseh, and they pursued Midian. So this is really after the battle was won, meaning we really won the battle already. Why did we win the battle already? Because the enemy is leaving Israel, and they basically killed out the majority of their army, or much more than the majority. And the few that are able to flee, you know, it doesn't seem like we're so the war is, we won the war already. They're trying to escape now. So now that we won the war, so Gideon allowed more people and called for more people to join. Let's just finish them off now. They already saw the salvation was from Hashem. There was no question about it. The winning a war like that, there's no way to, you know, you could win such a war unless Hashem is on your side and Hashem is doing the battle. But so Gideon now is calling them to join and help just finish things off. So the men of Israel, they gathered from Naphtali and from Asher and from all of the Menashe, and they pursued Midian, this nation. Gideon sent messengers not actually, Midian is the name of the king here. Now Gideon sent messengers throughout Mount Ephraim saying, come down toward Midian and secure the waterway to block them until Base Bera and the Jordan. No, it's not referring to the name of the king. This is the whatever's left of the nation. They're running toward them, and Gideon is saying, let's block them so we can kill them. And he specifically wants to block the river because if the Midianites cross it, they'll be able to go back to their land. So he's telling them to go down, block them until Base Bara and the Yarden. The Yarden is the main concern. So all the men of Ephraim, all the people of Ephraim were gathered and they occupied the water until Base Bara, Base Bara and the Jordan. They captured the two leaders of Midian, Orev and Zev. The two leaders of Midian, their name was Orev and Zev. And Orev means raven, Zev means wolf. Wonder what the meaning of that is. But these are the names of the two leaders of two of the leaders of Midian. We say it in the Tehillim. There's a chapter in Tehillim that talks about these leaders and winning this war. I can't think of what chapter it is offhand, but the names are familiar when you. So Orev, Zev, and Zebach and Salmona. So here he's capturing Orev and Zev. They killed Orev at the rock of Orev, and they killed Zev at the wine press of Zev. And they pursued Midian. And they brought the heads of Orev and Zev to Gideon across the Jordan. So this is the end of this chapter, but it's not the end of the war. We'll soon see now in chapter 8 that Gideon wants to finish them off. He wants to do a complete job. He's not satisfied with doing a half a job. Yes, Ben. Ben, did you want to ask something?
He's muted.
Ben, unmute yourself so we can hear you.
I wanted to say something short, that God is still fighting the Jews' wars in Israel, because we hear about the miracles almost in every war. But I wanted to say that in 48, we didn't have any arms, or not enough arms for the people that went to war. So they used to carry metal containers and beat on them just like they did here, and scare the people, and they would run after them. So they used exactly the same technique.
Yep. Listen.
In 48.
And Hashem was with them. Hashem helped them then as well win the war.
Also, it began with the Mitla Pass, remember? When the Israeli army was on the way to Alexandria. That was Hashem that did that.
It's in every war.
Yeah, the Six-Day War was a miracle.
That's right. That's right. It wasn't Ariel Sharon, it was Hashem.
Well, Sharon want the credit for it?
I know.
Moshe Dayan had some credit too.
Oh,
but
please.
you needed a Sharon to carry it out. So it was a messenger.
The soldiers carried it out.
So the final verse was, they brought the heads of Orev and Zev to Gidon across the Jordan. And what this means is that Gidon the next morning went across the Jordan, and those that had killed Orev and Zev, they brought it to Gidon. Gidon was already across the Jordan. They brought it to him across the Jordan because they wanted to show him the proof that they finished off these two leaders of Midian. Now, so we're in verse 1 now, chapter 8, verse 1. And here we have the typical situation where people get insulted if they're not included, especially after the fact. So the men of Ephraim said to Gidon, now Ephraim, it is interesting. Ephraim initially, they helped out Gidon now, because Gidon asked them, he said, make sure to block the water and catch Orev and Zev. They did. Now they go to Gidon and they said, the men of Ephraim said to Gidon, what is this thing that you have done to us, not summoning us when you went to fight with Midian? And they contended with him, very seriously. So they're very angry and insulted, and they don't understand. Why didn't you include us? You didn't even summon us in the beginning to fight with Midian. Now, the real reason why he didn't ask them to come was because he couldn't get to them. There were Midianite forces that were blocking. But they, of course, were insulted. And so Gidon, he uses an interesting method of how to diffuse the anger of the Ephraimites. And how does he do it? He tells them, you wanted to fight in the war. What you did was much greater. You just killed Orev and Zev. What I did in the war, that's nothing. We fought a war, that was nothing. What you did, that's what's the most important. So this is what he says. He said to them, in verse 2, he said to them, what have I now done compared to you? Are not the gleanings of Ephraim better than the vintage of Aviezer? And what he's referring to is that the gleanings of Ephraim is the killing of Orev and Zev by the Ephraimites isn't that better than what the whole war that we did in Aviezer? In other words, what we did was nothing compared to what you did. Into your hand did God give the leaders of Midian, Orev and Zev. And what could I do compared to you? And then their anger against him abated, and when he made the statement. So that is the I guess the great quality that Gideon had, that was able to figure out the right words, and give them the emotional support that they needed to hear to quiet them down. There is something that you get a feel from the books of the judge, from the books of the Tanakh, that it seems like people did a lot in their, they were very rough. There was a lot of violence, and the one of the ways to prove that the Tanakh is true is the fact that you have stories that are not they're not the most enjoyable stories to read. That's just a proof of how real and true every single detail is. Because if we wanted to make it look nice, and we wanted to rewrite history, there's a lot that we would change. And what you see is really, it's the fact. This is what you're seeing here is the greatest proof that it's so real is the fact that it's it's not the. Right. So here it looks like Ephraim was almost ready to start a war with Gideon. That's what it looks like. They're almost ready to be. And Gideon, very in a very wise and carefully worded statement, he's able to quiet them down. Okay, so now we're up to verse 4.
Rabbi, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay. With every battle that they fought and the Jewish people, the Israelites, won, what happened to the women and children? Sometimes they took them as slaves, or whatever, concubines. Other times they killed the children, or they killed them both. What happened in this war? Is there any mention?
I don't think there were any women and children. We're not fighting them on their territory. We're fighting them on our territory.
Okay, but then don't we go after their territory and wipe out the people?
Well, Midian,
or we just leave the battle.
Midian is not one of the 7 nations.
True.
So we really are trying to get rid of them from Israel. And they were, they were really causing us tremendous financial suffering and hardship, and they were destroying our entire everything that we did. They would destroy and steal, and so they were making it impossible for us to live. So we got rid of them. I don't know that we tried to that we wanted to destroy their women and children. If I'm not mistaken, that's not that wasn't of interest. But unless I can, unless I come up with, unless I see something differently, I would assume that we weren't really aiming at destroying them as a nation, destroying their warriors, and I think that's the idea.
Okay. Thank
I know
you.
you would like to hear that we wiped them totally out, so we don't have to worry about new warriors coming,
Yeah, that's right.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're fighting a war, you've got to fight it to win everything.
Right. I know. I can understand where you're coming from, and you know, it's. I guess it has there's a balance between ethics, you know, and the goal. You know, your goal. You have a good goal that you want to make sure we don't have any more problems in the future, but you know, it does touch upon. You know, there are nations that we're supposed to destroy completely, like Amalek. And then there are
Right,
nations, you know, that aren't, you know, they're not meant, like Shechem. When we destroyed Shechem, we didn't destroy, they didn't kill out the women and children. They killed out the men of Shechem,
right.
you know.
And King Saul, the same thing. I know. Okay.
Well, King
thank
Saul
you.
made a mistake. King Saul should have killed out the men,
I
women,
know.
and children
Yeah.
of Amalek. But I'm talking about where we didn't do anything, you know, where we were, where we we're not supposed to kill the women and children. You know, that's the point, that there are, you know, just because we fight a war, it's not necessarily appropriate to kill the women and children, and maybe generally we don't, and it's only on certain occasions where we would, you know, where we're following Hashem's command to do that. Okay,
That's true too.
so we're on the beginning of chapter 8 here. And we're on verse 4. And what we're going to see is that there are two cities, Sukkos and Penuel, and these two cities don't want to give Gideon. See, Gideon wants to continue fighting and get the rest of the escapees and capture them. And the problem is that his whole army is very hungry. They've been fighting. I mean, they've been, you know, chasing the those that had escaped, and the problem is that he doesn't have any food left. So he's asking Penuel, the city of Penuel and Sukkos, that you know, for food for the army, and the people there are nervous that Gideon maybe it's not over, and maybe the Midianites are going to come back and you know, fight them for providing food. So this is the way they're thinking. Now, to us, it seems a little crazy how they could even think anything like that. Why wouldn't they give their brethren any food? But they are, of course, they've suffered for 7 years. They're in a mode of victimhood, and there is such a psychological feeling where, you know, they've been a victim for so long, you know, it's hard to grow out of this feeling, and so the town of Sukkos and Penuel, I'm trying to look on a map exactly where they are. I see Sukkos is right on the eastern side of the Jordan River, at least according to this map. But it doesn't show exactly where Penuel is. Okay. Well, anyway, at least we got half, at least I found half of what I was looking for. Penuel, don't see it. Okay. Anyway, so these two cities are, we're going to talk about them. Gideon then arrived at the Jordan. he and the 300 men who were with him were crossing, exhausted, yet pursuing. So they're ready to go forward, but they are exhausted and hungry. So he said to the
Rabbi
people
Smith.
of Sukkot, yes.
The map shows it's about that Penuel is about 10 miles east of Sukkot.
Okay, good. Okay, wonderful. So you have a map there in the Mayam Lois.
Yes, yes.
That's good. Wow. I don't know what we would do without you, David. Thank you. It's great. You got the right book. Okay, so
Didn't we come across Penuel in the Torah?
in the Torah.
Is this the same Penuel where Jacob says, "I've seen the face of God," which I don't remember is where he slept and had the dream with the ladder, or is it where he wrestled with the angel? One of those two. He named it.
Yeah.
He gave it the name himself because I have seen the face of God.
Yeah. So that's where he wrestled with the angel. It's interesting because Sukkot also is where he camped.
Yeah. Okay. These are on
Sukkot.
These are on the western side of the Jordan because we have that Gideon has already crossed the Jordan.
Well, no.
And Jacob had not crossed over to the eastern side to see Esau yet. So we're in the same place.
It's the eastern side of the Jordan.
Eastern. No, I thought it says that Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed it. Which direction are we crossing?
So that's the thing. He crossed from the west to the east.
Oh, I thought the other way around. He was with the tribes on the east to begin with when the war was fought.
The fight was on the west. The fight, excuse me.
He helped his family to
just 1 second, Ben. The fight was on the west. Now, there is something that could confuse you, and that is that Manasseh is a tribe that's divided in half. So half of the tribe of Manasseh is on the east of the Jordan, and half of the tribe of Manasseh is on the west. But the fight took place on the west, and the Midianites actually live on the east, and they're just taking advantage of the Jews, and then they're heading back to their hometown. And so these are the people we're fighting while they came to the west to fight, to enjoy their plundering of the Jewish land. Mm-hmm. The Jewish people, fought a war against them, and now we're chasing them back while they're running back to their home. They're trying to run back home, and we're chasing them back. So Gideon is crossed the Jordan with his people, and there's Sukkot and Penuel. And it's very, very interesting that very nice that you remembered that. And it seems like this is the same place where Jacob came, Jacob passed through. Yes, Ben.
It is the same place because Jacob helped his family and everybody else to cross the Yabok east and then returned west to his camp.
Right. And the Yabok River is right near.
The angel.
Oh, that was not the Jordan. That was the Yabok.
The Yabok, but it's right near it. The Yabok River goes right near the Jordan.
Yeah.
So do we settle that this is the same Penuel or not?
So it seems like it is. It would make sense that it's the same Sukkot and the same Penuel.
Yes, and it's an unusual name. You wouldn't have two things named for the face of God.
Well, it could be, yeah. Good point. It's a good point. Okay. Well, it looks like our time is up. Okay, to be continued. Next week, Metz Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.